This is an intense garden area that is representative of what someone might do in their own backyard if they have a sloping area. So again, it's not a level flat space. It's not the perfect setup. It has a high watershed, yet we're able to maximize our area for both access and the ability to plant. I'm Justin Hitt with Prosperity Homestead, and what we've got here is our strawberries. And I can simply walk in here, but this is strawberries terraced out. Now today I'm probably going to weed this a little bit, maybe put down some straw, and I've got an access point. It's a hard access point on the bund, which is the lower terrace. Now these rows, you may have seen it in the previous video, are this particular way because we want to take that water that's coming off that watershed and we want to slow and spread it out, but we don't want it to flow down into our other bed areas. Now we'll talk about this next bed here in a second, but I can walk across this area here and I can access every strawberry bed and just really get a lot of use out of the space. Now below here is a terrace that's as level as we could get it, but it's a terrace that's going to give us another growing bed. Now this could be your vegetables, this could be the early season vegetables, and then down below you can get a later season vegetables. And you can see the same concept. There's a lower bund, which is your walking and access point. Now you can also walk in this trench down here and the trench up at the top as well. But ultimately, we are not tilling out all the way to the edge because we want to be able to slow and spread the water, soak it into the ground, and then as our beds mature, they're going to hold more water. So we almost need this clay bump here in order to maintain. It's a vegetative strip. We need this here to maintain the structure of our garden area because we're on a slope. And you can see hairy vetch growing on it. You can see some wild onions growing. And you can still plant close to it. Like for example, you can put a cover crop in. You can see some mustard greens there, some different types of turnips. But again, the space is shaped according to the available terrace that we built out. It's not a perfectly level terrace, but it will get that way over time. Next, we have another area that could be tilled out. I need to take down that structure to do it, but it shows you how we're stepping down. And as we step down, we get more beds. Now, could we dig this bed out completely and level out the soil? Yes, we could, but one of the rules about planting on slopes is you want soil to move uphill, not downhill. So if we terrace this out by making a big wide terrace rather than garden strips, what we're doing is we're actually increasing the amount of soil that's moving downhill. So by strip tilling, as you can see here, this is just a strip. It's like a double wide bed. By strip tilling on the areas, even as shallow as we are, we're moving the minimal amount of soil. We're creating a single growing space that slows and spreads water. And then we're ultimately giving us the same access. As you can see here, I'm walking across the bottom lower edge. The same access to the vegetables that are growing while maintaining these green vegetative strips. The vegetative strips are very powerful because what they do is they give a place for earthworms and beneficial insects and later biomass to produce in the growing area so that we can chop and drop. So you may not be able to chop and drop on your beds, at least not now. The beds are not very mature. It's still that red clay. So we just basically scratched up the surface to kind of break up the grasses. See, it wasn't even deep enough to take out all the grasses, but we scratched up the surface so we can get a cover crop in, so we can get our early crops in. This is perfect for broad forking. You can go through here and broad fork and loosen up the soil, but we're maintaining this structure so that even in a heavy rain, the water cannot flow down the hill. So I'm actually standing in a little ditch, and this little ditch is my bottom. And there used to be, and I don't know if I have other videos of it, but there used to be a flow right down this edge that would come out and go across the access point at the bottom. That doesn't happen anymore because, again, we terraced out the area. We created strips, planting strips and vegetative green strips rather than trying to force this whole area to be level. And we didn't plant on a slope because having designated walking paths compacts soil in strategic locations and overall gives us a more stable environment. Now, something else that's important to understand, that if we were to take that top end down as low as the bottom end, then we'd have a hazard at the top here. Essentially, you could fall into this corner. So again, it's a step terrace at a smaller scale. And this, again, it's a demonstration garden where we can start putting in perennials, annuals, other types of vegetables, and we can even come in and tune it up really quick with equipment. But if all you had was a hoe and all you had was a broad fork, you could maintain this area for generations. Because again, it's slowing and spreading the water. When the water moves across the surface, it'll pick up soil, it'll pick up nutrients, it'll pick up organic material, and you lose that. But this particular system here traps the nutrients, traps the organic material, and ultimately maintains a nice growing space. This could be your family backyard garden in an area that most people can't even mow easily. It could be a small permanent garden that grows over time, so flowers and bulbs and other things. But it ultimately is a nice little niche model in an area that normally would not have a lot of use to it. Now, how do we maintain this? Again, it's the same thing as maintaining the big terraces over there, is that when you walk through, I tend to walk on this top edge, and then if I'm going to walk through the bottom edge, I'll shovel that material up. I'll shovel this material up here, and I'll throw it uphill. Now we're throwing it uphill to maintain the growing mounds, and then we're mulching everything. We're bringing in as much biomass as possible. Now the benefit about this type of area is that we can get a lot of biomass in here without a lot of effort. And so again, the vegetative strips, once they're cut, you can just push a wheelbarrow through. These paths can actually get deeper and deeper, and we can fill them with mulch. You'll see a lot of my older videos where we'll dig a mulch path like this, and we'll fill it. We'll dig a ditch that is for water management. It's going to be deeper on the end I'm standing than the other end because we want it to hold the water. But we will fill it full of mulch, and that mulch will rot down over time, and then we'll layer that onto the beds. And then now we're recycling materials. We're taking wood chips, branches, other materials, breaking them down in the paths, and then using them as layers in the growing area. Now you do have to come in and weed every so often. You know, a lot of this stuff right here, you just gotta knock it down. And then these onions are edible, by the way, kind of like a field onion. But all these weeds, they get thrown in the paths, and then the water impounding in the path, the mulch in the path, the woody material in the path all start to break down and gets great biological activity going. And what that gives you is a place for your surplus biomass while maintaining a nutrient cycle to feed your plants. Now, what's also great about this too is that anything up here that gets saturated, that water soaking into the ground, and any water-soluble nitrogen that it takes away ends up in the next bed. See, if we cut this flat and made a big giant terrace, then you don't get that benefit. Also, we have, again, solar exposure, better solar exposure with the terracing. We have a little bit of structure that gives us a variety of microclimates. And then ultimately, we've got kind of a system approach. Now, we could probably go a little bit further. There's a path up here. We could probably go a little bit further to put some plants in this area up here, but I'm going to broad fork that out and do it by hand because it's so small. It's not worth bringing equipment in. And in fact, like I said, long-term maintenance of this larger terrace is really broad fork and just a hoe to chop it up, make it a little smooth. We just did this because we happen to have the equipment out for on the other side, but I don't know if you're noticing, but I'm able to just walk around inside of this garden without compacting soil that we're growing in. By having access to everything, you don't have to trudge through, 5-foot tall tomato plants to get to things. You can simply just walk down the path, walk around the outside, and access what you need. Now, in some of these wider terraces, you might have 2 or 3 rows, you might have a little keyhole garden, but whatever you have, you've got maximum effectiveness as far as accessibility, You've got management of water and no soil erosion, and ultimately something that you could bring in probably 5 or 6 straw bales. Now, $6 or $7 a straw bale. You're going to want to grow your own biomass, because that's pretty expensive. You can get a cover crop growing on this little hill here and just hand scythe it and then throw it in the beds. So we're essentially growing our biomass in the garden area, both as a windscreen for young plants, as habitat for beneficial insects. See how we're stacking all this function together? I'm Justin Hitt with Prosperity Homestead, and again, this is a demonstration of a small garden on a slope and how it's evolving over time so that you can see this in your own backyard. This is next to the house. This is in a little nook area that you can't use otherwise. This is an area that's easy to maintain. It grows its own biomass. Look at all this grass right here. And you can scythe it, you can work it with hand tools. No equipment is required. Again, I'm Justin Hitt with Prosperity Homestead. Visit www.prosperityhomestead.org with your questions.